Good evening. We are delighted so many people have come. This is a debate with the three candidates for Hampshire County Sheriff, which is on an election coming up, as you can see from the sign, September 6th, and we really hope you'll all vote. My name is Jean O'Neill. I'm going to be the moderator. We are co-sponsored by the Democratic Town Committees of Worthington and Williamsburg, and by Indivisible Northampton, Swing Left MA. They have recently joined forces. And we so much appreciate Colin Black, who is going to be doing the electronics and the use of the Grange for this facility. If we all appreciate them adequately, we will chip in a fund for air conditioning. So if you'll all please silence your phones, I'd appreciate it. We will begin. County sheriffs oversee about half of all prisoners in Massachusetts. So what they do, how they run their office, has an effect on our family, on the families of the incarcerated individuals. Thank you. The incarcerated individuals, their families, and on taxpayers, obviously. All the sheriffs in Massachusetts are up for election or re-election this year. They have 6-year terms. I understand that they are not supervised by another agency of the state, and if that's not correct, I'm sure I will be corrected. But the point is that the voters have the right to vote and see who they want to be sheriff for the county. We very much appreciate the three candidates coming. They are in alphabetical order. Patrick Halene.
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 We're
Him. Hey, Halene. I thought it was 2 syllables. Sorry.
Sometimes it is.
We're good.
Don't worry, he'll respond.
He told me he would. Caitlin Sepita.
Thank you.
And Yvonne Gitelson. We have drawn straws, and Caitlin will be starting with her opening remarks first, and then we'll go in alphabetical order.
I thought it was Yvonne.
Yvonne.
Who did?
I thought it was Yvonne. I thought Yvonne got the straw.
Yep.
Silly straws. I think you're right. Thank you. And I am absolutely not delighted anymore to say that this is being televised or recorded and will be on YouTube. And I will be fired from my job. Remarks will be timed so that we can get as many questions in as possible. So first there will be opening remarks. Then they will be able to ask each other a limited number of questions, and then we will have the audience questions. So we should begin.
And our timekeeper is?
We have 2 timekeepers in the
Great.
front. They will show a card when
Great.
time is up.
Do we get 1-minute warnings or 30 seconds or? Both. Okay, great. And a bell. Thank you. Good evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Yvonne Gitelson. I'm a Hilltown resident for the last 30 years. I'm a proud graduate and proponent of public education. I'm the former education coordinator of the Hampshire County Jail, and now I'm the corrections program specialist for Massachusetts, where I oversee all the county houses, the state prisons, and the DYS facilities. I know, and we know, that education is the only thing proven to reduce recidivism, that it saves lives and money, and it interrupts the school-to-prison pipeline. I'm the best choice because we need something very, very different for the Hampshire Sheriff's Office. I have the right combination of direct front lines experience and administrative managerial experience, plus the perspective of a tightwad taxpayer who believes in civic duty and restoring integrity to public servant leadership. The sheriff's position is not an entry-level position, and it requires a multifaceted skill set. Frontlines experience is not enough. I have extensive administrative experience. I have extensive managerial, supervisory, fiscal, and communication skills to do this job. And I also have significant diversity training, both with racial and ethnic groups and sexual and gender identity. I'm proactive, not reactive. I'm driven for continuous program improvement. I believe in accountability for all, regardless of type title, rank, or criminal history. I have no tolerance for corruption, special privilege, or conflict of interest, and I won't protect friends. I have a transition team in place, and I am ready on day one. What I won't do is just as important as what I will do. And among the things I won't do, I'm going to start with the most important one. I won't return any grant funding unused to any source. And in 2021, $250,000, really $500,000 is what it ended up being, in educational and vocational training grant money was returned to the Department of Education. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon or evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the Democratic Committees of Williamsburg and Worthington, as well as Indivisible Williamsburg and Northampton, for having us all here today. My name is Sepita. I am a candidate for Hampshire County Sheriff. I am a lifelong resident of Hampshire County, born and raised in Ware. I live now with my family in South Hadley and received most of my higher education here in the Valley at UMass, where I lived in Pelham during that time, served on the Conservation Commission in that town, so I've had some experience in public service as well. I've been a registered nurse for nearly 12 years, and most of that in correctional nursing, 9.5 at the Hampshire County Sheriff's Office, and I'm currently a registered nurse at the Berkshire County Sheriff's Office. I have had a significant amount of experience across different programs at the Sheriff's Office, including with the medication-assisted therapy program, which I was on the ground level of in terms of its creation, the initial grant writing assistance, and I designed and developed the record-keeping software for that program initially. My approach for the Sheriff's Office in my campaign is a four-pronged approach. It is facility modernization to begin with. We are an antiquated facility managing with 1970s technology, including typewriters, which are used to this day to keep records. It is also robust staff recruiting and retention measures that start with dealing with staff morale. We cannot do anything at this facility without the staff. I am a line staff member, always have been. I understand what that is like. I understand what they need, want, and deserve. It is also program expansion to include vocational and technical programs that take advantage of the job market that we are currently in. This is a staff-friendly job market. This is a manufacturing-friendly job market. The Valley has that to provide. We should be providing the skills and resources to our incarcerated population to take advantage of that post-release. And finally, it's a community outreach portion. We should be redeveloping our triad programs for our senior groups within the communities. We should be expanding our community service and work release programs, which were largely shut down during COVID, and we should be back into our communities offering service. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us, and thank you for bringing out the warm weather. I am Sheriff Patrick Halene. I'm a 64-year-old Irish immigrant to the Valley. I was brought up here, I was educated here, and I've lived here all my life since that point. I was a member of the Army National Guard, which gave me a start in how to develop in helping people. And that's my philosophy, is we are here to help. Now, that can take on many roles, but I decided to go the direction of corrections. And in doing so, I have learned that we are at a point in the correction system where change has to happen. And I started making those changes 5 years ago when I took over as the sheriff. And some of those changes involve the community. We are at a point in time where change has to happen. And we are going to have less and less people in bricks and mortar facilities. And we're going to have more and more people out into the community. That's the goal of corrections of the future. I am a certified jail manager. I am a leader in corrections. I am educated in corrections. And that's the direction I want to take this facility as we move forward. That's a hard task, and it makes a lot of people nervous when you start talking about breaking down the walls and moving people to the community. But there's technology that we have been using, and we are starting to look at more and more. How are we going to change the way people live? How are we going to change people who have been part of the criminal justice system if we don't give them another opportunity in the community? That's where we are in today's environment. That's where we will be for the next 15 to 20 years from everything that I'm reading. And that incorporates mental health, therapy, community wraparound services. The community has to be part of the solution to the problems that we have. Thank you.
The next aspect, by the way, I need to mention that the cards that you've written questions on, you'll need to hold those up so that they can be collected and reviewed. We'll review them to make sure we don't have duplicates, not going to review them for grammar or anything like that. Don't worry. We now come to the part where each of the candidates can ask one or the other of the other candidates a question. And we will start again with Yvonne.
I thought we were going alphabetically after opening statements. No?
Well, you would be next after his.
Halene, right? So asking a question? All right, so that doesn't matter. I'm happy to go. So, and we're asking questions of each other.
Either or both.
Either or both.
And they will have 2 minutes. Whoever
Right.
you ask will have 2
Okay.
minutes to answer.
Great. So I think I'm going to follow up on my last point here, which is that I've never heard from Mr. Halene his answer as to why he returned such a significant amount of education and vocational grant funding to the Department of Education in 2021. These were grants that I worked very, very hard to get. They were competitive grants, and I've never heard the answer as to why those went back without any conversation internally or any conversation with the Department of Education as to how we might have used that money. My final point is to say that no other sheriff returned any.
Oh, are we started? Yeah. Oh. I can't speak for any of the other sheriffs as to what they did with money. During COVID, our population tanked. We are now at 126 people as of today. We were in the 240s and down to 220s before COVID hit. And during that period of time, people were not coming into the facility, including people who were there to help educate. So we had a situation where as the population decreased, I have, as a financial person for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the funds that are built into a grant are spent appropriately. And if it's not spent for what the reasoning was, and there was very specific reasoning in that grant, why that money and how that money could be spent. I had discussions with higher level management, and the money was returned to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts so that it could be reallocated where it could be utilized.
Are we permitted any kind of response or rebuttal to answers?
Not unless there's some significant challenge to you. No.
I'll reserve my time.
Okay.
This is a question for Sheriff Halene as well, to piggyback on the fiduciary responsibility he just discussed. In the East Hampton forum that happened last week, Thursday, you made a point to mention that part of your plan going forward was to open a second Bridge to the Future house. There's currently one on the campus, or I should say slightly off the campus of the Sheriff's Office now. It is part of our reentry programming services. You mentioned expanding that program to a second building. Could you please discuss the annual cost of the current building in terms of rent, salary of staff, and the number of individuals it currently serves in their employment status, as well as how you are measuring success and recidivism in that particular building if we're talking about opening a second location?
Yes, I am talking about a second location in the eastern part of the county, and or even in the hill towns, depending on where we can find for an appropriate location and where the population is available that would be serviced by that program. Now, as far as the budget for that, yes, it is an expensive output. If you understand wraparound services, which I think I do, wraparound services are expensive because we are paying for people to be out in the community. We're paying for staff to supervise that, and we're also paying rent to a landlord. Those are all cost pieces that we have to endure. If we believe in rehabilitation, and if we believe in the possibility of reentry and getting people back on their feet, we have to spend money. And yes, I am willing to go to the bank and willing to go to the legislature and ask for money for those appropriate situations. Because, as I said before, this is the move. This is where we're going. We are not building any more brick and mortar facilities, even though the governor did not sign off on the legislation to build for the moratorium on jails and houses of correction. The reality is we are not going to be spending any money on it over the next 5 years. So we have to look at alternatives, and those alternatives have to be community-based. So yes, I will continue to spend money on those appropriate programs and the appropriate staff with the appropriate training to supervise those types of facilities, because that is what is demanded of this community from us as an agency.
Thank you. You may now ask a question of either or both of the other candidates.
Well, for candidate Sepita, I would just like to ask you a question as to how you arrived at the fact that I was never at the facility during the 2.5 years of COVID, when I had to go back and check the record myself, so that I was beginning to wonder if I was imagining being at the facility, because I was there more often than you were, if you want to calculate out the time, because I was in on the weekends, I was in on holidays, I was in at night. I visited many people. So how'd you arrive at that?
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify this for everybody who wasn't at the debate in East Hampton last week, where I said specifically the issue was that during the first month of COVID in April of 2020, when the facility had its initial COVID outbreak, for the entirety of that month, and we were treating 20 plus individuals, I worked personally 40 plus hours Monday through Friday, weekends as well, during that period of time in the COVID unit directly with those patients. At no time during any part of that month, and this is what I said, were you ever present in an area where I was visiting or following up with the staff who were directly working with the COVID patients. I worked a lot of hours. I worked 50 plus, 60 plus hours some weeks during that for shift coverage, because we were, again, in that department, short-staffed. So I did more where I was able to. And during the entirety of that time that we were dealing with that outbreak, not a single incident did I see you in the areas with the line staff during COVID. Not a single incident. I speak to that as a person working in those units, and I did not during that forum make mention of your being at the facility or not being in the facility for the 2.5 years of COVID. I did make mention during that initial outbreak month that at no point in the COVID positive areas with line staff or anywhere on the floors where at least I was present did I see you. That was a personal remark I made as a line staff member and an employee of yours during COVID. At no point were you present.
All right, thank you. We would like to take questions from the audience now, and we do have a few. One of them is, and each candidate may answer this, how would you describe the technology that is being used now, and how would you go about upgrading that? Let's start with Mr. Halene.
Okay, well, very simply put, technology is a continuing building of the apparatuses that we have in place. We have, in the last 2 years, increased the number of cameras throughout the facility for the protection of the staff and the protection of the inmates. I have instituted body cameras for staff moving inmates. I am purchasing more cameras at the present, body cameras for more staff to be utilized outside of the facility. Not only at the jail and house of correction, but when we do evictions, and that's part of the responsibility of the sheriff also, during those evictions, our staff wear body cameras so that they can show exactly what transpired during the course of those events. That is just part of it. We have also finished up contracting new wiring for inside the facility. That was in last year's budget, and we're working on more this for this year.
May I modify the question a little bit for the other two candidates? There's technology regarding cameras, and there is technology regarding databases and filing and so forth. Can we have an estimate of how you would tackle that problem? You may go first.
Thank you. So presently, typewriters are being used to keep day-to-day logs in every area of the jail. Ink ribbon typewriters that sit in every single case directly next to a computer that has a software package on it that does exactly what we need it to do. I work in Berkshire County. We use the exact same software package to 50 times more the capability than we use it at Hampshire County. We are asking very bright new staff to come in and keep logs on a typewriter that they've never seen because they're 24 years old and we haven't used typewriters since the 80s. Let's all be real. So that's presently in use. We would eliminate, day one, this is low-hanging fruit. We eliminate the typewriters and we move to the computer and we just start using it. It's a matter of introducing a singular PowerPoint program that I have to show the security staff how exactly it is they need to point and click to do all of their logs digitally on the software we currently have. It is no fiscal output to anybody else. Other things that need to be done. There needs to be Wi-Fi throughout the facility. We need to update our website. I am asking for a content update, not a database update.
Ms. Gitelson, do you have some views on the technology, either cameras or other?
Sure. I believe in transparency. It's my number one pillar, so I believe in my campaign. So I certainly believe in cameras wherever and whenever they increase the safety for everyone involved. I will echo what Ms. Sepita has said. I've also seen the typewriters. We've all seen the typewriters. I don't even know where to get the ribbons for the typewriters anymore. But it is a question and it is a concern. And I can tell you, now that I've seen all the other facilities around the state, the county houses, the state prisons, and DYS, they are far, far, far ahead of Hampshire County. And this blows my mind because this is the education county. And I don't understand how a system and a facility that is in this particular county can be so far behind, particularly with regard to education technology, which we could not use at all during the entire time of COVID. There was no bandwidth anywhere that students could receive.
Thank you. Let's continue along the same line with other upgrades, and I'll begin with you again, Ms. Gitelson. Other upgrades to the building, since it's an old building. What other upgrades besides what has just been addressed would you view important?
There are really so many. Honestly, one of the things that we need to do, I think, that would really make a difference to the staff in particular. And I'm going to focus a lot on the staff because right now at the Hampshire County facility, there are more staff than there are people in custody. So there are more of them than there are actually being incarcerated. So we've talked a lot about the morale and how low the morale has been. Here's the flip side of what I want to say about that. We have an enormous number of really talented people who desperately want to work hard and show that they can work hard. I want to rebrand the facility. It looks tired. It looks like the Dead Mall used to look. And it looks like stepping back in time about 25 years. It's dreary. It's old. It does not look like the people who are there, either the people in custody or the people who work in the facility. So among the things we need to do is we need to rebrand. We need to brighten the place. We need to change the uniforms.
Ms. Sepita?
I think part of what needs to be done first is a space reallocation. The facility is very old and designed in a way that corrections no longer functions anymore. We are an indirect care facility, meaning that our security staff is outside of the units where the individuals are housed. That's not how corrections is done now. It's a direct care facility model now. where the staff are within the housing units with those individuals. That's difficult for you to get around. You can't. But because of that, there are all kinds of very tiny spaces to be used, where now that we are moving post-COVID and there are less restrictions on about how we can house people, there are certainly recommendations, there are ways to do this, but we're talking about 128 individuals inside the building right now that is designed for well triple that. We could be reallocating space better to free up spaces to be able to do treatment, programmings, education more within the units, so it decreased our security burden in terms of moving and escorting individuals outside of the housing areas if, in conjunction with the technology upgrades, we were able to move our ancillary non-security staff into the secure areas more easily.
Sir?
So very simple. It just so happened that I have a picture here of half of the building that we did refurbish at the beginning of COVID, and anybody is quite welcome to look at it. Designed so that there were less people in less space, and you had educational and treatment space available right next to it. This was during COVID, and we did it right. Now, the rest of the building is an older building, and we are not at a point, if we are going to start moving people to the community, going to be in a situation where we can communicate with the state to get more money to refurbish the inside of the building. On top of which, I have designed a facility, $750,000 back 12 years ago, with all of these modernization pieces, still have it on my desk. The Department of Capital Asset Management and the legislature would not go along with spending the money to do it at that time, and any time we followed up, they have said no.
Sounds like we certainly have some difficulties that are not exclusively local. One of the things that has come up is the visiting rates, which of course were the visitors, friends and family, which of course we understand during COVID. How is that able to change now, and do we have any suggestions for the future? And we will go with Ms. Sepita.
So in-person visitation as it was pre-COVID has not resumed. We are largely still doing Zoom visits. In-person visits happen for legal reasons primarily. So Zoom is expanded for that purpose. Is it going to move back towards in-person? I suspect that that's how everybody would like for it to move, but we are not there yet. I think the expansion of Zoom as an option for everybody has been really, really great and should continue whether we move back to in-person or not. It facilitates and allows more people to have more visits and more contact with the community. We also know that recidivism is reduced when we institute programs that allow incarcerated individuals to have and remain in contact with their communities and families. So instituting and remaining with Zoom even after and if in-person visits remain is still a good thing. This can also be expanded through changes that may or may not be happening going forward with our technology systems as they pertain to phone calls and video phone calls.
Mr. Halene.
Yes, several things. We have moved to our minimum security individuals are able to have contact visits, and that takes place on the outside of the facility, so there is no harm that can happen to the individuals that are still incarcerated, as well as the staff. We are planning on reopening up visits in a much safer way than we were before COVID, in where it was all face-to-face. During COVID, we gave pretty much unlimited access to visits, and the inmates have actually stated that they enjoy the amount of time and the flexibility of the schedule to be able to talk to their kids at different times on the Zoom visits, and it's given them more interaction time. So we will be looking at all of those things. We've already been doing it over this last 6 months, and the game plan is to continue moving it forward in the fall. But it has to be very, very planned out from the standpoint of health and safety.
And Yvonne?
Yep. Hi there. So I'm a big fan of Zoom. I think Zoom has answered a lot of questions for a lot of folks. It does allow for enormous flexibility in terms of scheduling. It allows for enormous flexibility in terms of access. It takes away the issue of transportation, which would be an issue for a number of the families of our incarcerated individuals. And I have a question, because all the facilities went to Zoom when it came to visitation. Very few are moving back to in-person visits at this point, at least not yet. And I have 2 points that I want to make. The Hampshire County facility has enormous and beautiful outside fields. We have had good weather for months now. Why can't we have some outside visits with families in a safe way? My second question, and more concerning one, is since we have not had in-person visits inside the facility, how is contraband still coming into the facility? Because we have drugs still coming into the facility on a regular basis.
Thank you. One of the things that is very concerning from national news, as well as just thinking about it, is phone rates. And I understand that the legislature did not give any relief on that, but I would really like to understand how phone rates are determined, where that money goes, why there is such a high charge. And that would be for Mr. Halene first.
Okay. Very simple. Phone rates are based on the charges that a private company charges a facility for making phone calls. Now, behind that is there's security pieces that have to come into play on a telephone system. And so the security system that is in place in most facilities across the Commonwealth costs money. And a private vendor wants money back for that. Now, I was fully supportive of the legislature's act to eliminate that money. And what would happen is then it would be a budget item that would come back into our budget to pay for the phone systems. But the legislature didn't finish up that piece, and the governor did not sign off on that piece. So it will probably be brought back up next year. But I'm fully supportive of eliminating those fees.
Ms. Sepita?
Part of what happened during COVID is not only the institution of Zoom visits, but was also a change in the phone rates that all of the sheriffs agreed upon. Let's talk actual dollars and cents and time. So each individual, incarcerated individual, gets 10 minutes per week of free phone calls. After that, it is 14 cents per minute. That is not charged to the incarcerated individual. That is charged to the person that they are calling, which is the family. That is why the legislature was involved in this, because incarcerated individual phone calls to the outside disproportionately harm socioeconomically disadvantaged people. So we are asking folks on the outside who already have less means to burden more of the issue. So what the legislature had planned to do was essentially to take a big piggy bank, put a ton of money into it, and each individual facility needed to give then in their receipts for all of these phone calls, and then would then be reimbursed. Again, like the sheriff said, that's off the table for right now, likely to be revisited. What the sheriffs will hopefully be regaining in that is a little bit more control over the phone system.
Ms. Gitelson?
Yes. So I have a couple of questions, which are that since even though I worked inside the Hampshire County Jail, I was never privy to the budgets. Folks who work there don't get to see what things are spent on. And among the budgets that I never got to see was the inmate benefits fund. And I never got to see how much money was generated from phone calls or from commissary and how that money was then allocated. We know that inmates were not part of the decision-making process as to how inmate benefits were actually spent, but I'd like to know if profit was generated for the facility. I believe that it was, and where that money went and how much money over and above the actual cost of the phone calls was generated and went into the general budget of the facility. I'd like to know what that difference in amount is, because I believe that it is significant, including, by the way, not just phones, but also commissary. I'd like to know what the difference is there that inmates are charged in their accounts and what goes back to the facility. Thank you.
Which raises another point that I certainly hadn't thought of. what else do the inmates and what else should the inmates pay for one way or another? Yvonne, do you want to start with that because you led into that question?
I'm not sure that I have much to say that they should pay for over and above being incarcerated, since they don't have access to making an income other than whether or not they have a facility job for which they are paid cents per hour for their labor. That doesn't add up real quickly. I'm not sure what they really could spend it on. They do have accounts that they are allowed to use, which they do spend on phone, on commissary. They are allowed to receive outside items from their family members, such as items of clothing. But beyond that, I'm not sure that they should need to spend anything out of their own pockets for their time in custody.
Okay.
I largely agree with Ms. Gitelson. There's not much that they're being required to purchase on their own outside of items from the commissary that they would like above and beyond what they would normally be receiving, which is kind of basic. We call it, an indigent package, something that everybody's allowed access to. Toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, all of that kind of thing. Everybody's allowed that free of charge anyway. Anything additional onto that, food services, other hygiene products, snacks, things like that, they are allowed to purchase on their own. Past that, they're not really charged for very much, nor do I think they should be.
Mr. Halene, comment?
Yes. The individuals that are incarcerated at the Hampshire County Jail and House of Correction are not there by my choosing. They're sent there by the court. And so they can be there anywhere from 1 to 2 days all the way up to 3 or 4 years, depending on what their circumstances are. During that period of time, we become the caretaker of that individual. Our responsibility is constitutional from the sheriff's standpoint. And from a constitutional standpoint, we are responsible for taking care of all of their needs. And all of their needs are primary, not the extras that they can order through commissary, candy bars, soups, those types of things. Those are extras. And so between that and the idea that we as a society have incarcerated these people, we have to be responsible for taking care of all of their other needs, medical and otherwise.
Thank you.
May I have a follow-up comment to this?
Yes.
It's
30
pertinent to
seconds.
this issue. I do think, knowing and speaking to a number of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals, a number of them would actually like to contribute to restitution sorts of funds or outside charities or causes that they believe in. A number of them really do want to give back. Once they get inside, once they sober up, once they detox, they turn into pretty decent individuals who do try to turn their lives around. And a number of them would like to contribute back in some way. I would like to see our facility figure out ways that incarcerated individuals could find worthy causes that they would like to support on the outside and ways that they could contribute to that.
Thank you. Let's,
since you brought this comment up,
all right.
inmates have approached us and they have asked to do those types of things, and we have allowed that to happen where they have donated to outside causes. We're not totally controlling their behavior. If they find a cause that is worthy, we make sure that they can work with that. So those things have happened.
All right, thank you.
Can I add a piece to that?
Yes,
since
certainly.
we're all as well. If we could make this more of an institutional program, that would be better. During COVID, part of what happened is our minimum security building was removed from the control of the facility and given to parole. Prior to COVID, that building was used as a work release and community service building. That is no longer functioning in that capacity. What we have now is the Bridge to the Future program, which the sheriff was also discussing, which houses 9 individuals, one of whom is working in the community, and the facility pays $9,066 per month for that facility. What should be done is we should have a community service aspect brought into the service that the individuals are doing.
I need to have my.
This will be your last rebuttal.
This will be. It's fine. The minimum building has not been turned over to anybody else. We are working with the state parole office to give homes to people who did not have homes when they left custody of the institutions they were at.
Are they not individuals who were adjudicated to or being held by the Hampshire Sheriff's Office?
No, they're not. They are individuals who are parolees who have a new home plan with wraparound services in the community, and in that set of circumstances, they are being supervised by civilian staff, not correctional officers, not a policing situation. This is about treating people as people.
Via the Department of Parole, not the
Right.
Hampshire Sheriff's Office in a Hampshire Sheriff's Office building within the secure perimeter.
None of the
And-
none of the buildings
Okay,
are
no,
none
sir.
of the buildings are owned by
No.
the Hampshire Sheriff's Office.
Owned by the state.
They're owned by
and
the
used
state, which
by
which
the
parole
facility.
and you know,
It is now
Two
time for
separate
Yvonne
entities.
to enter in.
Yeah, I have a question. I'd like to know if parole pays rent for that building? For the use of those people who are under the auspices of the parole department? Do they pay rent into the Hampshire Sheriff's Office?
they do not pay
They
rent
do
to
not.
the
So we gave away a building to parole that they don't pay rent on, but yet we pay $9,000 plus per month for another building, the Bridge to the Future building, that could be used where that space is. So we've given away something for free that we don't get rent from, but we're paying rent elsewhere. Am I all caught up?
No, you're misinterpreting what actually transpires. That's the unfortunate part of it. These are all state buildings. They are not owned by Hampshire County in any way, shape, or form. And the Department of Parole works with the Hampshire Sheriff's Office to make sure that these people are coming back into the facility.
Were you
they're
directed by the state or the Office of Parole to give that building away to the Office of the
the building was
Parole
not given
Department?
away. The building
Okay.
was not given away. Please, don't twist what happened. You were not there for it, and you were not privy to any of the negotiations with the
I think we're all just
Undersecretary of
trying to
Public Safety.
understand how the money works, right? Because it sounds like it's going out with one hand and it's not coming in from the other.
No.
Okay. I think this has gone to where most of us don't understand the situation. I appreciate your exchange, but I think we better stop on that. I would like to go to when people get out. What is being done to make sure that when people get out, they are employable? They have hopefully more education than when they came in. And I'd like to see how that's working and what we can do to improve on it. And if I'm straight, it would be your turn to start. Okay.
In terms of employability upon release, we do have adult basic education classes that are being taught, HISET, which is your high school equivalency programming for those who are sentenced. Those are available. The sheriff has opened up the treatment facility for pretrial individuals. I think that's a little bit of a problem since those pretrial individuals are all maximum security and we're housing them in a medium security facility, but they are receiving treatment. Vocational programming is some. We have the cane shop and the wood shop, and there is also some programming being done on computers, though in an administration that I ran, it would be expanded to include other types of vocational and technical training that was more focused on job placement in a manufacturing and building market, which is in high demand on the outside now. They're simple classes, they're computer-based classes, and there are grant funding to do that, so it is no additional fiscal output from this taxpayer.
Mr. Halene?
Yes, everything changed during COVID. We had to keep everybody safe, so we cut back on programs. The Bridge to the Future House continued to operate after the initial issues with COVID because employers in the community called us and said, we can't find employees to come into work. What about your people? And so we sent our job placement person out to check out the work sites and make sure that the work sites were in fact safe and meeting the CDC standards. And we were able to continue to put people back out to work at the end of June in 2020. So it was a short time after everything had spiked. So we continue to do that, and we continue to get programs and trying to get more and more programs in through the community college system. We've been working diligently with both Greenfield Community and now Springfield Technical Community College on those.
Ms. Gitelson?
Yes. One of the concerning things is that there is no active articulation between the Office of Community Corrections and the main facility. You would think that for a system that it has been tasked with preparing corrections to evolve in a very, very different direction, primarily focusing on community corrections, that there should be quite a bit of active integration with the main facility and the community corrections program, so that when one finishes one sentence, one is handed off directly to the Office of Community Corrections, and that the education department is connected and the teacher in community corrections knows what happened inside the facility and vice versa. Same for treatment, same for mental health, substance abuse programming, etc. There is no articulation. The folks inside the main facility don't even know who the folks in community corrections are. They never meet together. So there is not a connection between the two major pieces of the facility.
So related to that, I'm a firm believer in written plans that are developed by committees, by teams. That's just part of how I was raised in the work environment. Is there a possibility of something like that being prepared? What would it take to make that happen? Go ahead, Caitlin.
Is there a possibility of that happening? Absolutely. What you need to do is get department heads in the right place and everybody pointed towards the same goal. I think part of what the sheriff's responsibility is creating an overarching strategy and a set of goals that everybody's following and everybody's working in the same direction. I think what's been lacking for a period of time is that overall focus, that everybody in the facility sees what the goal is and is moving in sync to that same goal. And we are led by our department heads in doing that, and the line staff follow suit. That doesn't exist. So there's a little bit of treading water. There's a lot of bit of treading water happening. So is it a possibility? Absolutely. With the right period of time and the right leadership at the forefront, absolutely it's possible.
Mr. Halene?
Yes, for the last 5 years, we have tried to go in that direction with some resistance from some staff members. The idea is to move corrections out of the building and into the community. I've said it and I will continue to repeat it. That is what we're supposed to do as a society. Now, there is no more Office of Community Corrections. It's the Community Justice Support Center now. And the Community Justice Support Center is in fact working with us very closely in bridging the gaps between incarceration and going back into a probation situation. We have people that work in the community every day. We have people that are connected to the drug court that is a case manager who works with the drug court so that when we have situations where they need guidance, they get guidance from one of our staff, not from some unknown person. People with experience in corrections, people experience in criminal justice.
Ms. Gitelson?
Yes. Is it possible to think differently about corrections and to think about it in the community? 100%. But you need to have a very different vision of what's possible. And when I think of what's possible, I look to a sheriff like Sheriff Kochi in Hamden, who is everywhere in his community at every time that I can think of. When I was out gathering signatures, when I'm out now campaigning, and I say to folks, do you know who your sheriff is? Sheriff Kochi. Nope. And they talk about all the ways that they've seen him and all the things that he's done. And I see an enormous number of possibilities for Hampshire. It's not about waiting for money from the legislature. Firstly, we could ask for and advocate for more money from the legislature. That's possible. I don't understand why we haven't done a better job with the money that we've had. And when we turn back money, especially grant money, free money, for education and vocational training. That I don't get.
I would like to know what % of the residents are suffering, when they come in, are suffering from a drug and alcohol problem? And is there adequate resource available or could be made available to make sure that they get straightened out? Because you talked about when they are straightened out, things are a whole lot better. Mr. Halene?
Yes, it varies depending on what population it is. We have a regional police lockup. As a matter of fact, it was the first freestanding regional police lockup in the Commonwealth, which was designed by myself with a team of people, police chiefs from the community. That population tends to be very different than the population of pretrial inmates who come in and spend a longer period of time, whether it be 27 days or 10 days or 15 days. And then the population on the sentence side, which averages about 9 months. And those two populations tend to have a roughly 60% co-occurring disorder situation. 60 to 80%. It depends on how figures are calculated out. But the reality is yes, we have a high percentage of people that are coming off the streets that have substance and mental health problems.
Okay. Ms. Gitelson?
I would agree with that it is a question of how you measure substance abuse issues, substance use issues, mental health issues, and I think there's general agreement that it's approximately over half of all the folks coming in, give or take, and it can vary. So having said that, there are these dual diagnoses, and that means that you have to treat both at the same time. There's a lot of buzz around opioid use disorder as though that's the number one problem. It isn't. It's still alcohol. But what we need to do is we need to think differently about how alcohol treatment is provided. And it has evolved quite a bit in the last couple of decades. It's time for the Hampshire County facility to move in a direction of modern, state-of-the-art, evidence-based treatment specifically with regard to alcohol, which is absolutely the number one problem still.
Thank you.
Can I answer that question?
I'm sorry, yes.
That's okay. So I've been a nurse at the facility for nearly 10 years and continue to do so. So these are the individuals that I am seeing on intake every single day. I'll pull the numbers directly from the correctional funding report, which came out earlier this year, which was a statewide report that looked at numbers that were given to it, the Special One-on-One Commission, directly by the sheriff's departments themselves. So these are numbers directly from the sheriff's office. So it is a 77% have a facility diagnosis of a substance use disorder. I would tell you anecdotally from seeing people across the table from me, it's higher than that, closer to 80, 85. I'm going to say that. A self-diagnosis of a mental health disorder of 70%, a facility-wide or a facility-dispensed diagnosis at 50%. That gap is important. So the facility is saying 50% of the people have a mental health disorder. People feel like they have more of an issue than that because you're not meeting the criteria for an actual diagnosis. You are self-medicating. That substance use disorder number is really higher. This is an artificially low number. When we talk about co-occurring disorders, for the facility numbers, 42%. Again, I will tell you it is largely anecdotally higher than that. What are we doing? We have a fantastic MAT program that's an OTP, which I was integral in creating.
Thank you. That raises a question that came from the floor about punishment, things like pepper spray or any other device. How often is something like that used? How often should it be used with these kinds, with the populations that you're describing? And I believe it's you to start first.
I think punishment is probably not the term that we want to use. Jail is already the punishment in it of itself. They've been removed from their freedoms on the outside, so they're not here for any additional punishment. What does happen sometimes is we have individuals who are volatile. We have individuals who are in mental health crisis and who are difficult to manage. What our staff is very well trained in and what they want to be more trained in are de-escalation techniques that are verbal. They do not want to place hands on anybody. But part of what we have to do, because we do not have enough mental health staff to deal with all of this, is we have critical incident trained staff that are using the critical incident training to the best of their abilities, but it is not a replacement for mental health staff. So yes, pepper spray, OC, gets used. A restraint chair gets used. How frequently? As little as we can use it, because we want to maintain people at the lowest level of the restraint and the lowest level of security that we possibly and safely can. But the staff cannot do that with the staffing issues that we have on the security and mental health side.
Sure.
I realized early on that we needed more. So first responders in a facility situation are the correctional officers, the sergeants, the lieutenants, whoever may be the closest to the situation. I decided at that point in time that we needed critical incident training, and I sent as many people as we could possibly afford to send at a time to 1 week of critical incident training, which helped them deal with mental health issues and deal with the de-escalation of situations. And that was built in coordination with the Department of Mental Health, and that program is still ongoing. And we will be sending more people again in the fall. And we eventually will get it from just the correctional officers up to other staff as well. On the other side of that, I have brought in a specialist, a psychologist, who is working with the staff to make sure that they all know what's needed from a mental health standpoint.
Ms. Gitelson?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of pepper spray. I think we need to find other ways to work with individuals who need to be calmed down. That should be a last resort under any circumstances. I do think that there is a lack of training with regard to conflict resolution, mediation, de-escalation. Folks who are correctional officers will tell you they would like more of that. They would like frequent training in those matters. And nobody feels good about using something like pepper spray. I'd like to hope not anyway. But I think we need to think differently about measures like that.
Thank you.
Jean, do we have lights we can turn on?
Yeah,
For the folks in the back, we're starting to get to the twilight hours.
Right.
I'm sure we do. What is the
Hi, everybody.
whoa? What is and should be the position of the office on hiring relatives for any staff position in the system? I don't know what the position is, and I would like to know what it should be. Ms. Gitelson?
Yeah, this is an issue that I have some real difficulty with because conflict of interest and questions of ethics and integrity are really near and dear to my heart. I think it's very, very hard when you have a relative on staff to be completely objective about any kinds of matters that involve that relative, or if it's a close friend, or if it's someone that you gave a job to without that job being posted either internally or externally, or the job never having been interviewed for. So when jobs aren't posted and people are simply given jobs, that erodes the morale of everybody else who was waiting for a position to open up and who was working hard and hoping that they would be able to be promoted to that position. And then somebody comes in from the outside and is simply handed a position and a title and a fancy salary, and that is a fast recipe for demoralizing and burnout of staff.
Ms. Sepita?
The sheriff should not be beholden to any friend or family member. It should be the most qualified candidate. It should be a meritocracy. If you work hard, you get promoted, you get the job. That's simple. You can go on the state payroll website right now, and you can see everyone who is on the payroll of the sheriff's office. Compare names. Compare names across facilities. Compare names across the state. I bet you see a lot of repeat on there.
Mr. Halene?
Yeah, just a point of information. My wife is a member of this department. She's been a member for 23 years, and she was hired by the previous sheriff. And it does not interfere with the department and what she does. And she does not answer to me, she answers to two other supervisors. And I find it offensive that we take good quality people and we demean them by saying, you can't be hired for this position because you're related to somebody. In many cases, the best correctional officers happen to have a mother or a father who was a correctional officer before them. And guess what? They turn into very good employees. So why wouldn't we continue to look at that? It's not the end all. It's not the end all. I look for quality. I look for people who have, in fact, good credentials. And if you look at our staff and you look at the staff that I have hired, many of them have very good, solid credentials over and above just being somebody I know.
May I respond to this question?
Yes, that will be your last
Okay.
extra response.
Thank you. Mr. Kalin, I'm sorry. You know, no matter how anybody may try to justify whether or not someone is a relative and is still the best qualified person for the job, it still has an influence on everybody else in the facility. When you know that someone is related to the sheriff or to someone in senior administration, that person becomes untouchable, right? In Japanese culture, it's when someone eats from an iron rice bowl. They're untouchable. You can't take their food away, right? So we all know who's untouchable in a facility like this. Everybody knows who's connected to whomever. Wow. So.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing from the audience, please. Nothing from the audience, please. Nothing from the audience, please. I have a last question, which is, how could the public be more involved in the department in making improvements to the system and finding out how things are and in making improvements? And we will start with Ms. Gitelson.
Sure. I am all about transparency. I'm all about accountability. I'm all about community. I think we need to pull back the curtain of all the different processes that go on in, excuse me.
Quiet, please.
Thank you.
Continue, please. No questions from the audience, please.
And there are so many different aspects to what goes on in the Hampshire Sheriff's Office. And I want to come back to the ACLU's campaign, Know Your Sheriff, the fact that so many people in Massachusetts do not know who their sheriff is, what the sheriff does, what goes on in the office. It's time to involve the community. So I want to create a citizens advisory board where people from every town will come in, keep an eye on what we're doing, invite them to our meetings. It shouldn't be a secret. If this is state government, you're paying our salaries, right? You're the ones who sign our checks. We're accountable to you. So let's open the curtain, let's open the doors, let's figure out ways to safely involve the community by inviting them in and by reaching out to the community and coming to town meetings like this one.
Thank you. Ms. Sepita?
I'm encouraged by the turnout of voters and constituents here tonight. This is a great place to start in educating yourself as voters. If anybody at home has received their mail-in ballot and looked at it, the sheriff's race is very last on that. We're a down ballot race. Not a ton of people know much about us. I would encourage the electorate to stay educated and to become educated if they are not. Part of what we can do as a facility is that community outreach portion. This has been a wonderful summer of festivals and parades and everything under the sun about Hampshire County. There have been educational and information booths at all of these locations. It would have been nice if the sheriff's office had posted officers or other staff at any of those, to be able to tell the community who we are, what we do, and offer it in reverse as well. You're interested in a career in criminal justice, you're interested in a career in nursing, in a correctional setting, or treatment, let's give you some information about how you can make that happen. So it works two ways. We can educate the community, and the community can be of service to us.
Mr. Halene?
Yes, in 2019, at the end of September, I held a forum at UMass, and in that discussion was how we would get started with a forum where outsiders would be part of the process of discussing how to change and how to work and how to bring the whole system to the community. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, we had not started that up. That is something that is right now on the back burner because we're in the process of hiring. We have been working for the last year and a half with the University of Mass. We've been working with Westfield State, the Elms, to communicate on hiring. And we've been doing that, and we've been invited into their classrooms to speak to the classes. And sometimes I do that personally because I was, in fact, a faculty member at Westfield State. So I have opportunities to do those things.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on cards from the audience? I'm not asking you to speak up. I'm asking if we've missed any cards. All right. I would like to start. I'm going to give them the straws again because we are going to have closing remarks, and we will do it with whoever gets the short straw first. And since you didn't get to draw before,
Short straw. You're the short straw.
That's the short straw? Okay.
please begin.
All right. You ready? All right. We're in the process of being in a competitive grant for $750,000 from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. That $750,000 will be used towards mental health and substance abuse treatment. That's just one of the pieces that we work on that takes time, and you have to work through the process with the government. We're continuing to build out voc ed programs. We've started a new program this summer, which we had been looking for an instructor who had college-level instructor experience on teaching the inmates how to do proper gardening and proper landscaping architecture. So those are a few of the more recent things that have happened. We're going to continue to rebuild our therapeutic model of corrections that had to take a step back during COVID. So we have 9 different agencies that audit us pretty much on a regular basis, and it just continually grows. We pass all of those audits successfully, including 100% from the National Commission on Correctional Health Care this past year and the American Correctional Association. We are doing what we're supposed to do. I am Patrick Halene. I am the Sheriff of Hampshire County, and I have an education, training, and certification to run the Sheriff's Department. I am the only person in this race that has run an agency and has managed a budget with over 150 employees on different levels and different places, and not just in a jail and house of correction. We conform to the rules and regulations that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts set for us. I know how to manage a multifaceted criminal justice agency. I'm hoping that the citizens recognize the hard work that I've done for them. Thank you.
I believe you were second. Thanks.
Sure. I've been a nurse for nearly 12 years, and almost all of it in corrections. What we are seeing in the individuals who are coming into incarcerated settings, exponentially more than anything else, are issues with substance use and mental health. This is what I do on a daily basis and have for the vast majority of my adult career in one setting or another. What these individuals need is care. They need help. They are sick. Who better to helm an agency than someone who has that as their background? The Sheriff's Department does not run because of the sheriff. The sheriff goes home on the weekends. He goes home in the evenings. It is a 24/7 facility. The Sheriff's Department runs because of the staff. Line staff like me. The Sheriff's Department runs because of the dedication of the hardworking men and women who work day to day, face to face with corrections involved individuals. Those are the people that need to be addressed. Those are the people that want to be heard. Those are the people who feel demoralized and intimidated and unheard in the current administration. Those people want a voice, And I'm very happy that I am the choice to be that voice for them. And I hope I'm also your choice on September 6th. Thank you.
Ms. Gitelson?
Yes, thank you. At the start of this race, 3 people who worked under the current administration stepped up to challenge the sitting sheriff. One from security, one from medical, one from education. The person from security has stepped out, but I want everybody to think about what is involved in stepping up to run for an office like this. I believe Ms. Sepita is a first-time candidate, as am I. It has been enormously expensive personally, financially, in terms of time as well. Think about what it says when someone in a system like this says, it's so significant that I want you to pay attention, voters, that I'm going to step up and run. I've never done this, and it's a very, very steep learning curve. There's a lot to do. So I want us to really think about what it says that folks are willing to take that extraordinary, extraordinary step. When I was being interviewed by the Hampshire Gazette, they said, well, it's interesting when one person challenges somebody in charge, but it really got our attention that 3 of you stepped up to announce your candidacies. What I would like to share with Mr. Halene is that I oversee dozens of programs now, all the county houses, the state prisons, the DYS facilities, millions of dollars in grant funding. And what I can tell you is that there's a whole lot going on in other facilities that is modern, cutting edge, state of the art. In Essex County, they're doing hardscaping, not just gardening and weeding, but hardscaping. In Hamden, they're doing a food truck project. They are doing live welding and virtual welding, and they've done so with skills capital grants, plus funding from the Department of Education. There are many other possibilities out there. I do think that a woman sheriff will get a lot of attention for Hampshire County, and I think I'm the right choice.
I really want to thank our candidates for coming and spending the evening with us and engaging. We very much appreciate all of you who came and offered your questions and listened and are going to go out and vote and tell everybody else to vote too.
When is that again?
I think it's September 6th.
Which is the day after what?
Labor Day.
So pay attention, everybody.
All
Back
right.
from your vacation on time.
Thank you. I understand this will be on YouTube. We'll get the word out somehow and you can share it. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.